Hey, Lalone Top 10s here. When we learn about ancient history, we usually hear about the kings and queens who lived lives of luxury in, in guided or gilded palaces. The rest of it usually gets cut out, but we will add the cut it out to this scene of the top 10 truly disgusting facts about ancient China. So, I do want to, clarify with you guys that this stuff will contain a little bit of disgusting material, so viewer discretion is advised. Alright? I know sometimes I do hate to say that, but for this one, it may contain some disgusting material, like I said, so viewer discretion is advised. Also, for the poor, life was a bit different in ancient China. Everyday life for an average person meant to be living on farm, eating very cheap meals, and struggling to survive. Life was dirty, hard, and short, and very disgusting. So that is what I'm trying to say. Number 10. They ate eggs soaked in a little boy's urine. That is seriously disgusting. But yeah, ancient Chinese medicine was advanced. Chinese scholars had ideas that wouldn't reach the West for thousands of years. But in the crude early forms that ancient Chinese used, these treatments were a lot different and a lot less appetizing. And for example, the ancient Chinese dish Tong Zi Dan, or in English, eggs boiled in a young boy's pee. The recipe calls for a few dozen eggs and a pot filled to the brim with the urine of prepubescent boys. For best results, the urine should come from boys no more than 10 years old. Tong Zi Dan has been a staple food for so long that Donyang it's registered as part of their heritage culture. It's believed that they started eating them during a time of poverty, when the poor desperately needed a way, to keep eggs from going bad. In most parts of China, they dealt with problems by boiling the eggs in tea, but the people Dongyang decide to do is a very different thing. Today, it's considered part of Chinese medicine, so some people in Donyang still eat these things, and vendors will even put buckets at primary schools to collect children's pee. Even today, Chinese doctors claim that eating eggs soaked in urine works wonders to keep your body healthy, which might be true, but we'll check our chances without it. So, what I'm trying to say is, it's truly disgusting, right? Very, very disgusting. I would not even need that. Number 9. Foreplay started with a woman's mutilated feet. So Chinese women, whether they're rich or poor, were encouraged to bind their feet as tightly as humanly possible. The goal was to keep your foot less than 4 inches long, which left it a crushed, mutilated mound of flesh they called a lotus foot. This wasn't just something a few people did. At its peak, almost every upper-class woman and 50% of the lower class bound their feet. The really weird part, though, is that how the men felt about it. To ancient Chinese men, they used to form lotus feet were the sexiest things on earth. Foreplay in ancient China was meant to start with a man fondling his partner's broken foot, and they put a lot into it. During the Qing Dynasty, they even released a sex manual with 48 different ways to fondle a mutilated foot. It isn't just lotus feet were sexy, they were sex as part of a woman's body. There were early Chinese sex books that women brazenly display every part of their body except for their feet. They would tantalizingly play with their bindings like they were going to reveal it, but they would never expose their bare feet. So, yeah, that sounds pretty much normal. Number 8. The everyday bout against their own stench. I mean, I guess my nose is literally numb when I say that. But smell was very important in ancient China. Body odor, they believed, was a sign of barbarism, and so the wealthy would go to great lengths to keep it off. Women who would walk around with very aromatic bags attached to their waists. When a man was in the presence of an emperor, he was required to suck on cloves to fight off bad breath. In those times, so much of a Chinese noble's paycheck went toward hygiene that they called it a subsidy for clothing and hair washing. For the poor, though, the tricks just weren't available, and so they resorted to some more desperate options. One ancient Chinese doctor, for example, recommended that at least once every year, every person should wash their armpits with pee. I mean, seriously. That's just even more disgusting. Trust me. Well, the northern parts of China were like nearby Mongolia. However, people would go the whole winter without bathing, fearing that a touch of water in the cold would make them ill. The Taoists, meanwhile, barely bathed at all. They believed that bathing spread illness, and so while Koreans were bathing at least twice a day, they were staying as far away as soap and water as humanly possible because they don't want to be unclean. Yuck, Koreans. Yuck. That's why I never trust Koreans whenever I'm taking a shower. Trust me. I guess I wouldn't now. Number 7. People ate their own lice. I mean, you gotta be freaking disgusting. Or freaking serious, if you think about it. When a massive part of your country is afraid to bathe, it causes a few problems, and so it might not particularly be surprised that ancient China was infested with lice. Lice were so widespread that early Chinese doctors used them to make a diagnosis. If the lice were crawling all around the patient's body, an early Chinese medical document says he will survive. If the lice are scrambling off his body like rats fleeing a sinking ship, he'll die. The poor were so used to being covered in lice that many would compulsively pluck them off their hair and eat them. This happened so much that they had remedies to help people who ate too much of their own dang lice. They would feed ashes and boil water from old combs. The next time you visit the bathroom, the doctors promised you would pass a belly full of lice. I wouldn't even believe them now. Number 6. Men eagerly castrated themselves. I mean, you gotta be freaking serious. But being poor in the ancient world was rough. If it would get him a job in the palace, a Chinese peasant would willingly chop off his own wiener. That is... oh gosh, this is so stupid. Anyway. Eunuchs in ancient China were allowed to work as servants to the emperor. For a poor person, that was the best shot at a better life you could have. A lot of parents would castrate their children at birth, but if your parents didn't think ahead, it was a decent and fairly popular career move for a grown man to castrate himself. I would never do that. But self-castration peaked during the Ming Dynasty. At one point, there were 100,000 eunuchs working across the country. So many people were castrating themselves that the government had to chase neutered, job-hungry men away from the palace. But really, why would they just chop off their wieners? I mean, that's gotta be serious. Number 5, they pooped into a pink pen. Even more nasty than just having your wiener chopped off. If nothing else, you certainly can't accuse ancient Chinese farmers of being wasteful. They even made use of their poop. So some farmers in ancient China relieved themselves in a special type of outhouse built over a pig pen. They would do their business and let it fall into the pig's trough, which for one unlucky pig would be the day's hors d'oeuvre, if you think about it. By 1000, the Chinese would use a public toilet instead, and that's a lot better. And that led to a whole new market. Peasants would travel into the city to collect the public's toilets, treasures, and would bring it back as cheap fertilizer. That wasn't just a minor business. Collected from a public toilet was considered the fast track to wealth. At the time, there was even a saying about it called treasure night soil, as if it were gold. I wouldn't consider poop as gold. I would only consider the never mind. But I'll just have to consider sturgeon poop to be rich. Ding. I wouldn't think that's caviar. That would never be. Alright, number 4. They were pioneers in medicinal uses of human pee. So, Chinese men have made some incredible breakthroughs. They invented, for example, endocrinology in the 200 BC, a science the West didn't even develop until the 1900s. That was an accomplishment, but it was also a very disgusting one, if you just think about it. Endocrinology involved separating hormones from human sanctions. When people were picking up human secretins, the Chinese chose pee, not poop. They would gather up about 150 gallons of it from boys and males in a large pan and boil it until they evaporated. A crystallized hormone that they called autumn mineral would be left behind. It was just crystallized urine, if you think about it. So, but yeah, they couldn't exactly inject hormones back then. So they took the crystallized urine by eating it, and they ate a lot of it. For instance, one medical paper instructed, take 5 to 7 pills with warm wine or soup before breakfast. Interestingly, that's what I'll never have again. I would. I can't even resist a pee, guys, trust me. Number 3, medicinal uses of human poop. So, they didn't start their breakthroughs with drinking pee. By the 4th century BC, they developed stool transplants, another medical idea the West didn't even discover until the 1900s. The ancient Chinese way of doing it, though, was a little bit less than appetizing. Chinese doctors would, the Chinese would put something together they called yellow soup, which is water mixed with a very healthy person's fermented poop. They gave it to patients who had diarrhea and ordered them to drink every last drop of that liquid feces. Again, this worked well, but the healthy bacteria in the stool would get rid of the bad bacteria in the patient's body. The same concept is used to treat C. diff, a deadly disease, but in ancient China, it's listed as a diarrhea remedy, so I guess if you have diarrhea remedy, just ferment your own poop and mix it up with some water or something like that. Wait a minute. Did I just say water? Yeah, water. Just mix your own water with some poop. That's it. That's what you had. Number 2. Children ate smallpox scabs. You gotta be serious. I mean, that's not even... Oh, that's just so disgusting. But China was also the first people who invented the first smallpox vaccine. By the year 1548, they written guides on one of history's first vaccinations. Even before it was written down, though, the people had heard about the vaccine and figured they could do it on themselves. Parents who had heard of this new smallpox vaccine fed their kids scabs that had been falling off the skin of smallpox patients. Well, they heard that exposing yourself to smallpox could keep you healthy. And never too pressed to hear the details. Just start feeding your kids some scabs and hope for the best. Also, feeding your scabs, of course, just makes things worse. But the real treatment wasn't much better. Instead, doctors would just crush those scabs into a powder and blow them up people's noses. If you think about it. Still, that is just a great way to kill you. Ding! Owie. Alright, we've finally gone to number 1, guys. With this thing called... They disgusted the world by they first invented toilet paper. So, I'm not sure really how they used toilet paper back then, but we're about to find out. But, they truly disgusted the world. Because they used toilet paper, and they started it off in 1393. They sent out the imperial court order 720,000 sheets in a single year. Leftovers would gather on the mountain, so massive that they called it Elephant Mountain. They invented toilet paper for a while by then, but it was hard to say that the Chinese didn't like to talk about it. The oldest reference there was a note from a man that mentions a paper on which there are quotations or commentaries by 5 classics or the name sages. Anyway, that's all I've got for you guys. Subscribe to my channel, like this video, and support me on Patreon. Thanks for watching.